to Career Uprising. I'm your host and professional career coach, Lorraine Rise. Join me as I guide you through an amazing journey of self-discovery and empowerment. If you are looking for work, changing careers, or stuck in a toxic job, then this is the show for you. I offer both practical and spiritual guidance to help you up-level and advance your career. Let's start the uprising. Hey everybody, you are listening to episode 32, Dealing with Difficult People at Work. Welcome to the show, everyone. It's me, Lorraine Rise, a career and life coach here to help you ease the pain of career transitions and job searching and just generally finding your purpose and finding more satisfaction in life. So I'm glad that you found me, however you found me, and kind of wherever you are. So today's episode, what I'm going to try to do is, this is a different topic, really. I haven't talked about this at all. We're not going to really talk about the job search process necessarily, because the coaching that I do is really about more than that. There's so many issues that can come up in one's career. And some of them have more to do with on the job, how to be more effective, more productive, get more enjoyment out of the job that you are in. So what I'm going to try to do today is help kind of ease the pain of dealing with difficult people. Those, bad bosses or negative complaining people, whatever it may be. I think we all know what it's like to deal with difficult people at some point in our careers, in our lives. So, and we'll always be dealing with this, right? We're always going to be communicating with people who are different from us in some way. I think that everybody knows somebody in their life who is difficult to get along with, but especially at work, because at work, it's like a melting pot. Usually you're bringing together all these different people with different backgrounds and different ideas, and bosses, customers, vendors, even coworkers, they're all a possible source of frustration and even resentment for us. So this is something that we have to learn to work through, all of us, if we want to be happy and successful and productive at our jobs. We have to learn how to work with difficult people. So my goal today is to help teach you some practical strategies for how to understand and communicate with these people in your workplace so they're not driving you so crazy. So overall, the intention of the show is to really kind of blend together the practical and the spiritual high level aspects that are necessary for us to thrive in our career. And that concept absolutely extends to the idea of working with different personalities and so forth. So thank you for joining. You picked a good show, and we're winding down here. 2018. It's crazy. This is going to be one of the last shows that I record for this year before I kind of hibernate for a couple of weeks and get ready to hit it big again in 2019. So exciting. So before we dive in, I want to make sure that you are given the opportunity to join my tribe, my growing little community. You can find me most prominently on LinkedIn under my name, Lorraine Rise, or if you prefer, I have a great Facebook group that's free. It's called Career Uprising, and then you can also go to my website and sign up to be in my email community. And you can do that at worksmartcounseling.com. You can learn more about me, my journey, and how I help people stop hating their jobs or find better ones, whatever they need. So feel free to go ahead and connect with me. But for today, let's go ahead and dive in. Difficult people. They're everywhere, aren't they? They really are. Dang it. I know. So they definitely show up in the workplace. All right. So communication, breakdowns and office politics, I'm sure you're no stranger to it, and I'm not either. And you've heard it said, I'm sure, that we often spend more time with our work families than our actual families. So this has pretty big implications if we can't learn how to get along and how to work with the people at our jobs. We spend a good amount of time there, and it's critical for your just personal well-being and mental health that you can get through this challenge. So let's talk about what the heck is going on with difficult people anyway. What is it that makes them difficult? Why do we deem them that way? Well, in my opinion, truthfully, we tend to deem people as difficult or negative when really they're just different from us in some way. Honestly, I think that's what it is in most cases. They're just different. So there's a lack of understanding about why they are the way they are, because it's not the way that you would do it. So you just don't understand it as much. Maybe they don't communicate the same way that you do, or they don't prioritize the same things. Maybe they don't have a filter when they talk, whatever it is. And it could be your coworkers, it could be a customer, it could be your boss. And sometimes it's the hardest thing when it's your boss, because then you feel kind of less free to speak your mind and tell them what you really want to say. And maybe that's true for customers too. But the bottom line is that around this person, for whatever reason, you feel like you can't be yourself. You feel like you have to adapt to them, and you resent that. That's a lot of what's going on here, okay? That's a lot of where your frustration is probably coming from, is the fact that you have to now adapt yourself in order to communicate with this person constructively, all right? So let's get right into it, and let's talk about, because I don't need to spend too much time describing difficult or negative people. I'm sure you can think of at least a couple of people right now who come to mind, so you have somebody to kind of think of. So let's dive in right now to some practical strategies for how to approach these people, all right? So step one, set boundaries. Setting boundaries for what you will and will not do at work is huge, all right? Now, this could include something like, whether or not you're going to answer emails at home or answer phone calls in your car when you're not really supposed to be working, all right? It could also encompass whether or not you're willing to say yes to taking on extra projects when your plate is already full and someone's asking you, can you do this? Can you do this? All right? So remember, we set boundaries not by what we say, by what we do. Not by what you say, but by what you do. All right? It's one thing to say, oh, I'm not going to reply to emails after hours. But if you do it anyway, they're going to keep sending them to you. This is how this works. So it's a whole nother thing to actually honor those boundaries and put it into practice rather than just saying it. People respond to what you do or don't do far beyond how they'll respond to just what you say. All right. And you can learn more about that back in episode 18, all about career burnout. I talk more about setting boundaries for yourself with people so that you don't get burned out. But whatever the problem is with the other person, ask yourself if maybe you just need to set some clearer expectations or boundaries with them in order to get them to change their behavior or their expectation of you, whatever it is, all right? Maybe they keep coming up to you wanting to talk about office gossip and politics, and you don't want any part of that. Well, have you ever given them that feedback? Have you ever told them, thanks, but no thanks, I'd really rather not hear about that or participate in that? You are responsible for setting that boundary and expectation and essentially training other people in how you want them to treat you. So consider whether or not you've set adequate boundaries with this person. And some people don't get the picture quickly. So you have to set really firm and clear boundaries. They may not be the kind of person that can read between the lines and take subtle cues. So you have to kind of know the person as well. Step 2, I want you to make an attempt to get to know this person and understand them. I know that doesn't sound like something you want to do, but it's important. Seek first to understand and then to be understood. These are words to live by. And these words come from Stephen Covey, who wrote The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, a great book. Seek first to understand and then to be understood. When you understand the other person, you can now begin communicating with them. You aren't really communicating with them until you understand them. And likewise, them with you. Now, understanding doesn't mean agreeing. It doesn't mean condoning. It just means simply that, understanding. It means clarity. And there's an immense amount of freedom in simply understanding why a person is the way they are and where they're coming from. And it allows you to not take anything personally, because it's never personal. And you can modify your approach to that person based on this new understanding of them. All right. So I want you to ask yourself with this one, do I simply need to make an attempt to understand their point of view better? Maybe that's where the frustration is coming from. Seek first to understand and then to be understood, and watch your life change. I mean it. Now, this may mean that simply you need to try, bonding with them a little bit more, just make an attempt to get to know them, whether it's your boss or a coworker, on a little bit more of a social level. Doesn't mean you have to like them. Doesn't mean you have to go hang out with them outside of work. It doesn't mean you have to be Facebook friends or anything like that. It just means that you need to make a reasonable attempt to be a little bit more social and cordial and inclusive, maybe, of them for the sake of working together more constructively. You can't clean up their side of the street, but you can clean up yours. All right. And oftentimes that's enough. Just cleaning up your side is enough to start seeing a difference and getting them to respond differently to you. So make an honest attempt to find common ground with this person. I mean, if you're going to be spending most of the day with them, Monday through Friday, 9 to 5 or whatever, it would help maybe if you knew them a little more personally, and likewise for them to get to know you a little bit better. Okay? Understanding equals clarity. Understanding equals forgiveness, and understanding equals communication. Okay? Especially, I would say, when it is your boss that is the difficult person, it's kind of shifting that paradigm a little bit from, oh, you work for me to you work with me. Working alongside them is ideal. Now, a lot of that comes from the boss. A good boss, in my opinion, works not just over you, but alongside you. That's just my opinion. So if you're a boss out there, that's just my 2 cents. Is that you need to really earn respect and work alongside people and again, understand them a little bit more on a personal level. Okay, so this is a good spot to take a quick commercial break, but there's a lot more. I have 2 more really good actionable tips for you so that you can start using this to maximize your relationships and your communications at work. Okay, we'll be right back. While the show takes a short break, I want to tell you how you can work with me personally as your career coach. My signature program, Career Transformation, is perfectly designed for clients who are going through a major career transition. If you're changing fields, returning to the workforce after an absence, or maybe you're undecided on a career path, then this is the program for you. Through the coaching process, we'll gain clarity on your path and craft a job search strategy to support your big career move. If that sounds amazing, take action now by heading over to my website, WorkSmartCounseling.com. That's WorkSmart, COUNSEL, ing.com to learn more about the Career Transformation Program and apply for a phone call with me. All right, let's get back to the show. And we are back. Thanks for hanging out with me today, guys. We are talking about how to deal with difficult people. We can't avoid them. So I laid out 2 strategies for you already about setting boundaries. Sometimes that's the first step, is kind of teaching people how to treat us and how to communicate with us. And then number 2, making an attempt to get to know them and understand them a little bit better so you can kind of understand why they are difficult to you. So I've got 2 more strategies. I've got a couple more tips here, and just in case those don't work for you. So step 3 is sometimes you can just ignore it. And let me explain myself a little bit on this one. I think that very often we kind of give in and give attention and energy to things that don't really need it. We pay attention to things that we really can just ignore, but it's just a habit. We're used to reacting and responding to them, even though we really don't need to. And so when you've tried everything else above and, the person is still not being receptive to changing, you might just need to ignore either them or ignore their behavior. So those 2 things I've kind of got separated, and it depends on the situation, but I just want you to consider it, because I know you can't always ignore a person if you have to work with them, but you often can ignore a certain behavior or a certain habit that they have that you don't like. You don't necessarily have to give into it and give it more energy and more attention. So whenever they do whatever it is that is bothering you, I want you to ask yourself, does this really warrant your attention and your energy? And like I said, so if this isn't possible and you've already done the tips that I've shared before, there is one more method. But I just want you to remember that you don't have to reply to every email. You don't have to laugh at every joke. You don't have to respond to every comment. You have control here. And in most situations, it often is possible to separate the person from the behavior. So just think about that and in your person, in your situation, and see if that method would be applicable. But then there's step 4. Get others involved to help you. All right. Sometimes this is necessary. And this is step 4 for a reason. This is the last one, typically, when you've exhausted the other 3. All right. So when you've done your due diligence and you've made an attempt to work with this person, then perhaps you can and should get others involved if the situation warrants it. All right. So first, maybe you might try going through a coworker or somebody kind of informally, if appropriate. We don't want to spread gossip or, get people involved that don't need to be involved. So it might depend on what the situation is, but maybe this other coworker is already aware and also bothered by this person. So maybe the 2 of you can kind of put your heads together and go, all right, how are we going to communicate with this person? How are we going to work constructively with them? And in all likelihood, I would say your colleagues, your managers, your friends, people have experienced similar situations. Everyone's dealt with difficult people. So when you don't know what else to do, sometimes it's okay to ask other people. Maybe they can give it to you from a different angle or have a different take on the situation. All right. So seek them out, share your story, see what they have to say, using discretion, of course, but you might find some advice. All right. But when all else fails too, there are absolutely times when you need to escalate something to your manager or human resources. Maybe human resources if the problem is your manager. That's often what they're there for. It's perfectly okay to do that in a lot of situations when you've exhausted other means. All right. But I will say this too, that when you bring it to the other person, whether it's HR or your boss, they're likely going to expect you to come to the table with what you've already done to remedy the situation. So be prepared to share that. All right. So this will give you enormous credibility and it'll help you to make your case. And they're going to be more likely to help you if you can say, hey, look, here's the situation. I've done X, Y, and Z to try and fix it and try to reason with this person. What else can I do? That's a very empowering stance to take. And it shows that you're not just, tattletaling or trying to get someone else to fix it. You really have given it some due diligence and tried, but you're open to hearing if there's something else that you should be doing. All right. That is the best approach to take. And it won't look like you can't handle your own problems, right? Because you're going to be showing that you've already made an attempt. All right. So sometimes I think the only way really to get someone moving is through that top-down approach, especially if you work in kind of a bureaucratic organization and there's kind of a hierarchy there. You may have to do it that way. But here's one more thing to remember too, before we kind of wrap things up here. I always like to throw this in because this is so true. I think in probably 90% of cases, even though it doesn't seem like it, people are not typically difficult just for the sake of being difficult. I know it feels that way sometimes. It feels like the person is just kind of out to get you. But there's nearly always some underlying reason that is motivating them to act the way that they do. Really, I promise. Now, the motivation is probably not going to be apparent to you. You know what? It may not even be apparent to them. If they don't have a whole lot of self-awareness, they may not even realize how they are coming across to other people. So they may not know even their own motivation for their annoying or frustrating behavior. And this is really, really important to remember. So your goal is, and that's why understanding them is so important. Your goal in understanding them is try to identify their trigger, because I promise you they have a trigger. We all do for certain behaviors. What is making them act in this way? What is stopping them from cooperating with you? And how can you help to almost kind of meet their needs a little bit and resolve the situation? So people are different from you, and they have their own motivations, their own triggers, their own levels of self-awareness. And this is why it's so hard to deal with them sometimes. So keep that in mind. They're not just trying to make your life miserable, or at least not in most cases. They just have something else going on underneath. Something is triggering them. It's got nothing to do with you. It's really never personal. It's got to do with them. All right. So that's why you want to kind of figure out what that is. All right. Let me give you just a really quick example of this that just came to my mind. I'm thinking back, speaking of kind of triggering people, I'm thinking back to a time years ago when I was a manager at a retail center, and I got a promotion out of the one location that I was in into being kind of a regional floating manager. And so one day I came back and I was doing some training and just visiting at the old center that I used to manage. So I was working with the new director who was there in my old position. And, we ended up having, I don't remember what was over, but we ended up having some kind of what I found out to be disagreement. I think I said something that bothered her or something like that. And someone else brought it to my attention later. And what I learned, it was shocking to me because I was like, did that really upset her? It was so trivial and had nothing to do with her. But what it was that she had this sensitivity about the fact that I used to manage that center. So she kind of assumed that I would be, nitpicking what she was doing and, kind of watching her or judging, which was so not the case. I was actually so happy to be in my new role and not be at that location anymore. But she made an assumption about my intentions, and it was false. So it caused us to end up having a disagreement that we had to work out with a manager and everything. And I remember it just blowing my mind because I couldn't believe the misperception. But it's something about me being in that center. She had a sensitivity, and it just got triggered. And when I learned that afterwards, and I understood why she reacted the way she did, oh my goodness, it just made all the difference. I'm telling you, understanding people and where they're coming from, even if you don't agree with it, makes all the difference. All right. So that just kind of popped into my brain. I wasn't planning on sharing that, but it just seemed really appropriate. So all right. I really, really hope that helps you. That is it for episode 32. As always, I have a standing invitation that if you like what you hear, you should consider coming on my show. I can coach you on the air, or I can answer your question. You can send me a question via email, Facebook, LinkedIn. Just make sure you tell me that you want me to answer it on air, and I would be happy to do that. And I have coaching programs, resume writing programs, whatever you need. And they are going to be even better in 2019. I've got so much cool stuff coming at you guys in the new year. So please don't hesitate. Reach out to me if what you hear speaks to you. But I hope it served you. And so I will be back with a fresh topic in December. And we're going to finish out the year here for 2018 with Career Uprising. I'm so excited. I can't believe it's flown by so fast. But I will be back next week with a fresh topic. I love you guys. Go out there, as I always say, be magnificent, and I will talk to you next time. That's it for today's show. Thank you so much for listening. If you like what you heard today, please consider giving the show a positive review on iTunes. It would mean a lot to me, and it would help to spread the word so that others can learn about the show. Thanks again for tuning in, and I can't wait to connect with you again next time on Career Uprising.